If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. Hello everyone. Sorry if my voice sounds different in any of these. I've had quite a bad throat this past week. I hope you're all doing well and have a great day. I love you all and enjoy these stories. Me and my father would always go hunting together when I was younger. It's honestly one of the most fond memories I have of being young. There was nothing more exciting than getting back from school, going to see my dad, getting in his truck and going out hunting. Now I never shot any guns at the time. Of course I didn't. I was far too young, but that didn't take away from the joy of the experience. What was better was we also brought Lucky, our dog, with us. She would keep me company, and I'd always have a great time with her regardless. Now there was one incident that really shook my dad, and I knew it was bad back then because I'd never seen him shook before. I mean, I've never even seen him this shook after. Even back then I knew something was seriously wrong. So my story takes place 20 years ago. It's on one of them summer evenings. My dad and I go out hunting. We're having a really good time, to be honest. The only problem is there's far too many bugs around, and my dog keeps on barking randomly. It's a kind of bark that goes through you, and in the end I just look at her and tell her to shut up. I love her, but everyone has a breaking point. Anyway, we're having a really good time. We stop and make a small campfire, roast some marshmallows, feed my dog some dog treats. We start talking about things we've done throughout the week and how my school's going. I start telling my dad how much I love playing football, and how he says that if I keep it up, I might be able to go really far one day. As we're doing so, Lucky starts going mental. I just look at my dad with frustration. It made me jump. I've dropped my marshmallow into the fire, and it's now burnt. I go, come here girl, and reach for some more dog treats, but she doesn't seem interested. I think, she's finally stopped eating, I don't believe it, and laugh at my dad. But my dad's looking off to the side. I can tell something isn't right now. I go to say about the dog and he hushes me. He has a very serious look in his face. He tells me to get up now in a very low tone. Lucky's going crazy though. Not barking now, but acting very passive aggressive, with her head low to the ground, making this deep growl that I've never heard before. This alone terrifies me. My dad then says we gotta get out of here. Now I don't know what he's saying, but we immediately put the fire out, get the guns and our other stuff, and leave the marshmallows and dog treats. I know something's bad because my dog doesn't even go and reach for the trees. I ask my dad what's wrong, but he tells me to keep quiet. He eventually says, well, I just saw something. No hunters should be out in the area. I checked it out before, we're the only ones here. I don't know if it's a park ranger maybe, but why would they just be staring like that? Anyway, we're about halfway back to our truck. I'm annoyed because I don't know why we've had to pack up so early and I've left my marshmallows. We suddenly hear a voice coming from what seems to be directly behind us. We both stop. It sounds like one or two people talking to each other, but I can't make out a word of it. This is weird because I didn't think voices could carry over the sound of the bugs and stuff, especially not at this time of year. My dog begins doing this weird thing where she stands just in front of me and my dad and doesn't move, like she's pointing. I then hear another snap. I look up and say, Dad, what the hell? Why is there a skull there in the bushes? I didn't think we had elk out here. Just as that happens, my dad grabs my arm and tells me to run. All three of us then bolt it to where the truck is. As we're running, we can hear the voices seeming to get closer and closer. I say, Dad, it's just a park ranger, relax, you can hear them, or hunters. He says, I've been doing this for way too long. That's no normal hunter or park ranger. The dog begins barking like crazy. We get into the truck and my dad floors it out of there. Now, he didn't tell me what he thought had happened at the time, but he began speaking to my mum about what happened. Now, I've never seen my dad look so scared in my life before, not even to this day. As I'm lingering around their door, I hear him say the word skinwalker. Now, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I learned in my adult life what it was. And I'm certain that's exactly what we saw on that day. This has left me feeling extremely shook, and I'd love some opinions. So last year, I had a very strange experience in a national forest out in California. I was by myself, on a road trip with my dog, and I was driving pretty far into the national trail, or more like national forest. Now, I should say I like to camp in national parks and forests, because it's isolate, so my dog can roam free. A trade-off for sketchy rough drives into parks sometimes. Now anyway, I was driving up this dirt road, kind of curling up a mountain around maybe 5 PM. It was very nice out, sunny and warm, with a slight breeze. Nothing serious happened, but I felt extremely uncomfortable driving into the area, and that feeling did not let up. Driving up the mountain, I felt like I shouldn't stay there, and I even texted my boyfriend about it, for as long as I could on my phone before I lost my service. I was looking for a sign of another person having been here lately, but I don't see anything. I'm beginning to worry now. I pull over, getting out of my car with my dog, looking over the edge and notice a dead squirrel, some broken glass mixed in with dirt and gravel. Yucca, my dog starts to growl slightly. She is vocal, but I've almost only ever seen or heard her growl with other dogs. Not for no reason. Now, I did see her growl at a possum once, so it could be something she smelt maybe. This place continued to make me feel quite on edge, but I pride myself in being an independent traveller and backpacker, so I decided to continue at least a bit further with my grumbling dog. I need to see if I can find a good place to camp at. I continued to notice more dead animals. Keep in mind, no one is going to be going more than 5 or 10 miles an hour up this thing, and that's if there's anyone even there. I hear men's voices. They sound close, and I think I should call out to them, so I stop my car, but kind of freeze up and feel like I shouldn't. You know that feeling you get in your gut sometimes that something's just wrong, and you're in a situation that you somehow shouldn't be? Well, it was that. Now, I can't really make out what they're saying. I don't see any sign of people anywhere, and I get back in my car and continue to drive forward and cautiously look for where the voices are coming from. Now, I've never ran into people in a national park or forest before when I've gone this deep in. The unsettling feeling I'm having grows. It just doesn't make sense why they're up here. I give up being brave and go to turn my car around, I honestly don't remember how yuck I was acting on the way down. I was scared and focused on getting out of there. I distinctly remember being surprised at her grumbling when we were standing outside of my car, kind of dangerously quick when I went back down the mountain, not seeing any sign of anyone. I decided to spring for the luxury and get a hotel for the night. I mean, it makes sense, right? I figured I was just fine. Huge and open spaces can be intimidating, I told myself. The voices? They could have been echoing from somewhere else far away, and just sounded close. Now animals die, glass gets broken. Nothing happened too. Cool. But I remember this place. It just sticks with me. Whenever I'm watching scary movies, and if I'm walking my dog in the woods at night, nothing compares to the feeling I had driving up the mountain. And it's honestly kind of interesting to me, and also frightening. I recently happened across some information as well as some Native American lore that made me extremely uneasy. Now fast forward a year. I've mentioned this place to a few people and the haunting vibes it gave me, but nothing more. Googled the national park once and didn't see anything, but didn't look much either. I like scary movies and things of that nature. So my boyfriend and I were coming up on finishing our round trip yesterday. We were in Wyoming for a wedding. There were only 2 or 3 hours left and the sun had set, so we decided to listen to some scary podcasts. We went from the no sleep one to lots of different ones. Now I'm half paying attention, petting my dog, playing Pokemon on an emulator. And hear a story about Wendigos. It then very briefly says what they are and how they can mimic voices. I mean it when I say I had the worst chills ever when I heard that. I asked my boyfriend if he remembers the national forest, and I'm freaked out now. He says he does, and he reminds me that he texted me I was probably close to a Wendigo. I remember him saying that, but didn't know much about their lore and thought he was just being funny, like yeah, Bigfoot stalking you or some other dad joke. He was like, no, I mean, I was mostly joking, but I said it specifically because you were hearing voices that you couldn't trace. Obviously, there's a ton of questionable information out there, but I tried to find more reputable websites and authentic experiences. I then looked up the missing people search in the area I was in, Mendocino, and I went through different websites and news articles of people going missing. They're all a little hidden underneath national park websites and pictures of trees. I remembered looking up the forest I was in about a year ago and didn't see anything and realised these stories didn't seem to be spoken about much. This piques my intuition. I then searched for the exact area I was in. It started with that over 100 people in the last 8 years had gone missing and not been found, many of which are found dead. Now this terrifies me. I didn't know any of this before I went in there. Remembering how unsafe I felt and how much I wanted to get out of there terrifies me. I felt so uneasy, and to this day, even hearing a voice terrifies me if I don't know where it's coming from. I have never went back to that national park since. I don't want to. This is actually my stepmom / her best friend story. Now my stepmom, we'll call her Mancy, grew up as kind of a privileged teen in the 70s. Her mum and her family had moved over here, the States, from England when she was about 9. She went to a pretty nice high school in a really nice town. There, she made friends with a girl Lily. who didn't exactly run with Nancy's type of crowd. They hit it off, and Lily would take Nancy out to do her type of stuff: hiking, fishing and sailing. Anyway, because of Lily's influence, the two of them would go and do stuff like that a good amount. One Sunday, they decide to hike in some hills about an hour away. Nancy then puts on what I'm sure were her extremely expensive hiking shoes, and the two of them drove off to the hiking trails. Lily parked in the big clearing with the makeshift parking spots, but there's no other cars there. This was only important in hindsight. They started hiking up the hill, off the path, because Lily fancied herself as a badass. This hiking was nothing extraordinary. Anyway, they reached the top of the hill and my stepmom is done. The polished, pampered side of her was coming out and she groaned until Lily said okay, they're gonna rest, then walk, but slower. They had started down the hill for maybe only 10 minutes when Nancy started moaning again. Lily conceded to walking down the side of the road instead of the rough hiking trail Prior picked. So there they are, probably looking like a couple of tools geared up for some hiking and walking down a crappy road. And after not even 5 minutes, a truck pulled up next to them. It's red and rusty, and just generally looks like a clunker. The guy rolled down the window, and the girls look in through the passenger side window. He had a big beard, baseball cap pulled down, long brown hair. He greeted them, even smiling through his beard, asking if they needed a ride. Nancy describes him as charming, even cute. Lily still says the moment he greeted them, chills went up her spine. But despite her better judgment, my stepmom convinces her to get in the truck, saying it's only going to be a 10-minute drive tops. The two girls now open the passenger side door to the old rusty thing, the guy directing them to the back seat. They settle in, and the truck goes forward. Lily always says this is a point when it hit her that they made a big mistake. The back seat was clean enough, but there's rope on the floor, and 4 boxes of saran wrap hanging out from under the passenger seat. It seems kind of creepy but weird. Very out of place. But Lily didn't want to freak out my stepmom, keeping quiet. After 10 minutes, the woods don't look any clearer. They hadn't seen another car the whole time. Lily asking how long he thought it'd be. He said he's going to take a different route down the hill and had to stop somewhere first. That was it. Now the girls were about 18 at the time and Lily didn't want to press the issue. She was scared. Now she could remember his hair because she's sitting behind him. It was very tangled and dirty. She noticed crusted mud on his collar. Trying to find something identifiable about him, getting scared the more she picks up on details. He was youngish, strong looking, had a 1 on both of them, so they didn't ask any more questions, and he didn't offer any information and they drove on. Several minutes after that, they reach a tiny shack / log cabin looking place right in a clearing. There was an old stump where someone had been cutting wood down with a huge axe and with a log. Lily's on red alert now. The guy turned off the truck and slipped out saying, "I'll be right back, don't get out," and he goes to the house. Lily tried to speak to my stepmom about how incredibly uncomfortable she is, but she mostly dismisses it. Lily begins laughing, increasingly freaked out, finally putting her foot down, demanding Nancy exits the truck with her. So when they get out and walk around the front of the vehicle, they're now found to be about 50 yards away from the house. The guy would have left 2 young girls in the truck alone while going into his house. So they wander around, looking at it hesitantly. If the guy is really decent, he is just giving us a ride, then it'd be super rude for us to run off, right? My stepmom had this strict upbringing when it comes to manners and public persona, and she saw it as an issue of that nature. So she actually started to head back to the truck, opening the front door to climb in the driver's seat. Lily's mad now though, and yells at her. Oh, the driver's side door. Just under it, by the seat, you can see a big hatchet. It's covered in red and brown stains, like the floor. Lily's uncomfortable and starts losing it. My stepmom starts getting hysterical. They decide to leave. They're gonna book it off to the side of the property, into the trees. They bumped around in the trees for a little while until Lily was fairly confident they're on their way back down the hill. My stepmom cried all the way down, Lily feeling bad about it, but completely freaked out. When they finally got back down to the bottom and saw the old wooden fence that surrounded the original parking area, they were relieved. As they got closer, they saw it. The truck, parked on the other side of the gravelly makeshift lot, just sitting there facing the other way innocently. They couldn't see if anyone's in it, and of course Mancy wanted to run for the car, but Lily's hesitant. She managed to calm down my stepmom, saying she wanted to wait before running out into the open to see what's out there. Remember, it's the 70s, no cell phones. There was no ranger station around or any park rangers. The parking lot was big and empty. Who knows what would have happened if they decided to stroll across it. Thankfully, Lily convinces my stepmom to chill, and the two of them hunker down against a big tree, hidden by bushes and the other trees, and waited it out for what seemed to be a couple of hours. When dark starts to fall, all the animals start coming out and making sounds, and my stepmom predictably started getting antsy and began bothering Lily, who was tired, and moves away, giving in. She was just planning their dash to the car when they hear a loud bang sound across the twilight lit lot. They watch as one of the back doors to the car swings open and a bearded guy jumps out. He got out, shut the door, looking around for a few moments, then getting back in his truck. The truck lumbers past their car and out of sight. They can tell he's about to do a loop and come back. They wait until he's around a corner, then sprint into their cars, peeling out as fast as they can. They never went on expeditions like this again, but also never reported it to the authorities. Now, when I was a child, my Friday nights were spent at a program called Celebrate Recovery, CR for short. The program was for recovering addicts and childcare was provided. My mum was the ringleader of the group, while my dad attended as an alcoholic and drug user. This being said, my whole life I've been surrounded by people who have questionable pasts, and have always been taught to love every single one of them equally. This is great, but this one time, it might have backfired. I was 6 or 7, and I knew everyone at CR, and they knew me. An hour before the program started, people would come early, bring food. As a messed up family, we would eat together. Now, whenever someone new arrived, I would always introduce myself. Now, I didn't know this one guy would take it way too far though. During one night, there was a new person, and I ran up to introduce myself. He told me his name was Bob, and began a very suspicious friendship. From that week on, Bob would bring stuffed animals for other kids, but would leave me the biggest one, without fail, every single time. He would also bring candy for us, I found out a few years later that it is actually dipped in gasoline. Now this went on for weeks and Bob and I got on pretty well. He gains my trust. My parents were naturally suspicious of Bob and cautioned 6-year-old me to be careful around my new best friend. One Friday night, Bob came to CR, telling me he had a surprise for me in the back seat of his car and for me to follow him. Stupidly, I followed him, and once we reached his car, Bob told me that he had a bad back, and if I wanted my surprise, I need to climb in to get it. Now right before I was about to reach into his car, my mum, my hero, was walking out of her office, saw the interaction and screams this guy's name, and tells him what is he doing, to get over here now. My mum then screams at me to come here. I run to my mum and we walk back to dinner. Apparently after the incident, my mum found out Bob would go to large gatherings but would not attend the breakout sessions. Instead, he would come to childcare. The workers did not think this was a red flag. When my mum found this out, she went to the church and hired security. The officers told Bob he was no longer allowed to come to CR and posted officers outside childcare. Sadly, it didn't stop him though. He would come to the Saturday night service at church and would give the kids gas-covered candy, stuffed animals in an attempt to get them back multiple times. One night, my friends and I were playing when I look up and there was Bob, staring directly at me. I'd been told by my mum if he was there to show up to Miss Jamie and report it. I did just that, and even went as far as hiding until he was gone. 13 years later, I'm so thankful to my mum for being so vigilant because it stopped me from being kidnapped.
This literally just happened, and Reddit is the only thing that keeps me sane, so here we go. I got a new neighbour a couple of months ago, really nice Flanders neighbourly type dude. He's older, maybe in his 50s, lives alone, has kids I see come and go on the weekend sometimes. All around normal guy I thought. He bought my husband and I chocolate and a joint for Christmas. He left a bunch of random cat toys at our doorstep for my cat who had been venturing to his yard for a couple of weeks. We talked to him occasionally, but never got more than a couple of minutes. He has cancer and is dying. That was a shock, and immediately we both fell for him. That was until tonight. Last week, we get home from work around 10:30 at night. 30 minutes later, there's a knock at my door. It's a police officer. This is really odd. The PO asks us, "Have you seen your neighbour recently? When was the last time you talked to him?" Of course, I thought the worst. Oh god, he must have died or something, right? Wrong. This guy called the cops on us, saying that my husband and I had been stalking him, peering into his windows and whispering harassing threats to him. I was dumbfounded and honestly hurt. It's not a good feeling to know that someone is thinking these things of you. Immediately, the cops suspected something mentally wrong might be going on with this dude. He had been up for like 6 days, and his new medicine might have been messing with him. And he also said that I was propositioning for him, so to say. Like, I was staring at him through the windows and mouthing words. Like, why? What would I do that for? You can't even see through this guy's windows from my house. My husband was livid. He told the cops to please go and take away his guns, because something is not right with him. The cop did nothing and just said not to bother him. Well, that sounds like good advice, if that already wasn't what we was doing already. We packed up clothes and our dog for a couple of nights and went to stay out of town. I felt really nauseous, thinking about how this old pervy dude having creepy subconscious sexual thoughts about me. I mean, to hallucinate this entire fabricated story of stalking and harassment means he is thinking about us all day. After a few days, we came home and I chalked up to, this guy's dying, he doesn't look good and his meds are probably messing with him, hopefully he gets help. Tonight was just like any other night. I pulled into my driveway and was coming home from work, but this time I noticed immediately that my neighbour was in his car in his driveway, just waiting there. and he immediately started yelling at us. All I got from him was incoherent yelling, was something about stalking and threatening his kid. By the way, his kid looks about 7 to 9, why would we do that? All this built up anger spewed out of me at that moment, and I started yelling, "You're insane! What's wrong with you? You need help!" My husband was yelling too, we were all yelling. Within 30 seconds, Flanders was walking towards my house from his lawn and put a gun to my husband's head. He pointed it and quickly moved his hand to the ground, shooting my grass twice and then shooting the air twice. Needless to say, we rushed inside and called 911. The SWAT team came along with what looked like 30 cars and showed up all along my block. My plan of action is to file a restraining order against him in the morning. I'm in such shock, and I would never have imagined anything like this would have happened, and it just scares the living daylights out of me that you can't really seriously trust anybody, no matter how nice and wholesome you think they are.
I think the strangest experience of my entire life happened when I was fishing once. So I wouldn't say me and my friend are avid fishers. Well, I'm definitely not, but he's much more of a fishing guy than I am. So he has a boat and we like to go fishing on some late evenings. There's something very relaxing about it. You can kind of just get away from everything, and the lack of technology surrounding you and the peace of the waters is very calming. Now the setting was just right on this one particular Thursday. The water's calm, the sky is clear. Clouds? Nowhere to be seen. It's beautiful. I'm spending more time looking up at all the stars, talking to my friend about them, than I am concentrating on my fishing line. My friend's not as interested in stars as me, but I start talking to him about all kinds of things. Like, hey, do you think there's actually life out there? And there's gotta be. There's so many stars, there's no way it can't be the case. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, whatever, bud, my friend says to me. He's more interested in fishing than he is alien life and the planets out there. Whatever. We start talking about his work and girls. Then suddenly, I notice that all the hairs on my arms are beginning to stand up. I say, hey, what's up with my arms? He then says, yeah, I was going to ask the same thing, but with my arms. He then shows me his forearm, and all his hairs are standing up too. I think this is really odd. He then says, oh, it's weird, it's almost like a storm's coming. I can sense the electricity in the air. I say, yeah, me too actually, but there's no clouds. Anyway, we have an uneasy silence for the next 10 minutes, but neither of us can shake the feeling of electricity and energy around us. Now, as I'm lying back in the boat, I look up and I can see what appears to be a shooting star, but it stops now and just seems to, hover there for a second. I tell my friend to turn his light off and look at this. He doesn't reply. I say it again. He's caught in a blank stare at the lake. I go to sit up, then I realise that the lake's almost illuminated. Not very bright, but just enough that you can notice it. Then, fish begin to rise around us. Now, all of the fish in the lake have all simultaneously died as though they've been electrocuted and floated up to the surface. I look up in the sky just in time to see the flash of light beam away. I don't know if this is some kind of, insect I've never seen before or what, but I couldn't believe my eyes. I looked at my buddy and he just said, "It's time to go home." Now, I've never seen anything like it. Now, I know calling it alien life may be a far stretch, or some kind of divine intervention, but I honestly have no idea what it was. It was literally like somebody electrocuted everything inside the lake, and I'm sure that thing in the sky was the source of it. I just wish more people were there to see it.
For a bit of background before I tell my story, the place in which these events took place is a holiday resort about 2 hours away from where I live. I've been going there every summer for years, and do so with many of my friends from home. The area isn't too big. It consists of a few housing estates, some better off than others, and some restaurants, a bar and some grocery stores. The main attraction is the beach and the golf course. If you don't play golf and don't do any water sports, then as a 15 to 17 year old teenager, the only thing there to do is get drunk with your friends in the night. I fell into this category. Obviously, we were all minors, so we'd drink on the beach when no adults were there. Nearly every teenage kid did this. The golf course, as I mentioned earlier, runs onto the beach, so we'd all cycle over to the golf course and get into the beach at the night through a shortcut. Anyway, onto the story. So this happened a few years ago, and it was just a normal night. We got our drink and we headed for the beach. Two of my friends had left a couple of wooden pallets on the beach earlier that day, so we could light a fire to keep us warm. So we went looking for the pallets in the pitch black dark, just the moon as a source of light. Then in the distance we saw a firelight. We assumed some of our friends from the neighbouring house in the estate had gotten the pallets earlier. As we got close to the light, we noticed the people gathered around it weren't anyone we recognised. There were about 9 or 10 guys, and not one of them I could see were from the area. I know this because, as I said, the holiday is quite small and a close-knit, so everyone knows everyone, even the locals. They were older kids, probably about 19-20. They were using the pallets we brought down for a beach fire. They were definitely drinking heavily. One of my friends was confident and stupidly decided to shout at them, not knowing what the consequences would be. They then looked at us and began running towards us from the beach. We all scattered and started running away, knowing they were after us. I remember vividly hiding in a bunker of my own. I only realise now how stupid it was to hide alone in a bunker. I could hear them shouting and said they'd find us and get us. I hid beneath there for around 2 minutes until the 4 guys found me. They gathered around me and demanded I follow them. I tried to run, but they grabbed me. I remember I began tearing up, but the terror left me emotionless. They brought me down to the beach and threw me into the sand. One guy then said, "Give me your phone and any money you have." I didn't want to get hurt, so I complied. Fortunately, I had only had a bit of change, and we had already brought our drinks, so I had no phone because we could misplace things if we were too drunk, which in hindsight was pretty dumb. The fact that I had very little money really annoyed them. After accusing me of not giving them everything I had on me, one of the older guys said, "Let's throw him into the bonfire." He said it thinking it would be fun, as if it was some sort of sick joke. Before I could think to run, 2 guys grabbed me by my arms. I'll never forget how terrified I was. I shouted, "Please, no, don't," as if it would help. I squirmed and tried to fight their grip as they dragged me closer and closer to the fire. I could feel the heat gradually getting more intense. I really thought I was going to be lobbed into the bonfire. Then, out of some miracle, I managed to escape one of their grips, and I shook free of the other one, and I ran for my life. They ran after me as far as the golf club. I think the only reason they didn't catch me is because they were very drunk, and I was sober and more aware. As soon as I realised they weren't tailing me anymore, I sat down on a wall and started crying. I was so scared. I was too scared to even get up. I didn't even have my cell phone to call my friends. I didn't know if they were okay. I left my bike on the golf course, so I had to walk home that night. I texted my friend and explained what happened, and we all assured one another we were okay. The next morning, my friend and I decided to stay home for the remainder of the holiday. We never told our parents out of fear we'd get in trouble for drinking. I regret not having told them, considering these guys could have done it to someone again the next night, and maybe that person wouldn't have been as lucky as I was.
So when I was 16, I got my first job working at Target. Most of what I would do is walk around the store tidying up and stocking shelves. Pretty easy job to do. One day, I was stocking food when a guy comes up to ask me where a product is. I told him and offered to show him where it was, so I walked him over and then started to leave. He was like, "Wait." Assuming he needed more help, I went back over and he immediately started grilling me with questions. How old are you? What ethnicity are you? I'm Asian, but he starts to guess my country. Where do you live? Do you always work here? And to my dismay, when did you get off work today? He had a really creepy, unsettling smile. He was vaguely cross-eyed, which in the situation adds to the creepy vibe. I just said I didn't know when I would get off work, and deflected most of his weird questions and began walking away. A few days later, he appeared in the store again and found me. I was scared when I saw him, and he asked again, when and where do I get off work and what am I doing? I said I don't know, and he started to walk away again, but he followed and started telling me I'm beautiful just like his wife. Now I'm getting really uncomfortable, so I tried to find a co-worker to talk to them to try and get away from him, or at least have some other place to go where other people can witness his weirdness. Couldn't find anyone, so I had to go work at the cash register instead. There's more people there at least. That got him to go away, but he gives me the creepiest ever smile and says, I'll see you after work. I was scared at that point, in case he stalked me home after work and waited in the parking lot. I didn't want to tell my manager since I just started my job and didn't want to make it a big deal. Stupid decision, but luckily nothing happened after work. The guy stopped showing up and I never saw him again.
Around a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was using the app Whisper to help with making friends after getting out of high school. I was 19 at the time, had a really nice boyfriend, etc. I had used Whisper before, and actually made 2 or 3 friends during my senior year, and also found a friend of mine's boyfriend cheating on Whisper. So safe to say, this app can be a handful sometimes. I put out a Whisper, asking for someone to talk to, and of course I got a ton of replies, but I couldn't get to them all. But I'd messaged some of the interesting ones back. This guy named Jack started messaging me. He seemed really nice. He said he was 23, and actually lived 8 minutes from my house. If you use Whisper, you would know that you can search by area or go into the general section and see thousands of Whispers being uploaded that you could reply to. You can also send photos instantly after 4 messages for some reason. As soon as we messaged 4 times, he sent me a selfie, and I was surprised, but I didn't really respond about it. Jack was telling me how he works for a towering company in a neighbouring town, how he would have to use the interstate and go to these places. At the time, I didn't have a job because my mum was sick. So I'd use my laptop out in the kitchen at the table to watch streams and play some games, in case you needed me at any point. I remember watching my friends stream, talking to my friends, and generally having a good time until I got a text from Jack. Now, I never gave him my address, and he never really explained where he lived. I didn't mention the church, interstate, or anything near me. But he texted me saying, "Hey, look out the window." I thought maybe something might have happened on the interstate, but then I remembered I never told him how close he was to me. But I assumed he guessed I lived nearby. I see a tow truck right outside my house with a car that broke down or something. My blood ran cold. He was at the truck, waving. Also very inappropriate while working, but that's beside the point. I started shaking due to having some bad anxiety. I ended up having an anxiety attack. How did he know where I lived? I replied asking what he meant, and he said, "Well, you're home, aren't you?" I didn't respond. Went back to the stream I had up and started typing to my friends, freaking out to them and causing them to panic as well. I didn't want to call the cops because my cousin is one, and so is my friends. As soon as anything was heard about it, I'd be in deep trouble for it, so I ignored him. Then he sent me a disgusting pic on the app of himself. I was disgusted and deleted the post and messages from Whisper. I also blocked him. The next day, an unknown number texted me, and I figured it was him. I ignored it, and then I got a restricted phone call, and I picked up. Big mistake. I was out in the garage with my cat, she's a stray, and this voice on the other end said, "Hey, you look great right now. Wanna come for an ice cream down the road?" I looked out the door and he was next to me, and I see him in his car, driving slow, locking his eyes on me. I jumped up and ran inside after hanging up. Ran into my room so I could feel comfortable with my blankets in my bed. I was petrified. I got a job soon after that at Subway, and he would come in and start harassing me, texting me on random numbers since I blocked them all. I felt paranoid all the time, and he seemed to know where I was at all times. One day, my now ex-boyfriend ended up texting him. I had given him his original number that I got, just in case anything had happened to me since I blocked it. Furiously, he told him to leave me alone, stop stalking me and everything. I never got a message after that, but I'm still paranoid he's watching me.
Just yesterday, I had collected my son from school. While driving back, there was a white health services van reversing quite fast onto the road. I come to stop as this driver didn't seem to care about oncoming traffic. Great. I couldn't move my car as there were cars behind me and cars coming towards me. Plus, I was irritated that this driver had such a careless attitude. So I give a gentle beep. So friendly that another parent who was walking her daughter thought I was giving her a beep, so she gave a wave. The driver stops the van as I beep and proceeds to drive on. As I do so, the van followed after. I don't think anything of it, continuing onto the main road. The traffic was quite heavy due to the school collections, so I decided to take a detour through a housing estate to make my journey home quicker. The van decides to follow. I noticed the van was coming up quite fast on me. I remained calm, but my son kept on looking out the window, now commenting, "He looks angry, Mum." I assumed that he's just going the same way, but I find it very strange. The detour through the neighbourhood that I took was not to a place I'm very familiar with. I'm trying to find roads that I recognise. All the while the van is driving behind me, picking up speed. I eventually come back to the main road by my home, but I'm afraid to go directly home because I'm sure he's following me. I indicated right but quickly go left, and the van does the same. I decide to drive to my local petrol station and stay there. As I drive towards the petrol station, the van speeds up beside me, almost forcing my car off the road. I pull in and gasp for a breath. The van drove on, breaking many red lights. I have no idea what this van wanted, or who they actually were, but it's terrifying knowing they got that angry and all I had was a 6-year-old in the car with me. He's obviously not actually a healthcare worker or anything like this, so I just know it was one dodgy situation I'm glad I got out of.
For a little backstory, I was 17 at the time. When I was 12, my stepfather moved us from the city to the small town where he grew up. Let's just say it was not an easy transition. Most kids had grown up there, and everyone had a very tight-knit social group. And boy, they sure didn't like me. Some of you may get what I mean. Any friends I thought I had in the beginning were simply looking for ways to make my life hell. This is one of those everyone knows your business towns, so anything I divulged got manipulated and then became public knowledge. I was utterly depressed and contemplated suicide many times. Kids can be so mean. So fast forward to high school, I had a small group of people that I could talk to, and I decided that I couldn't care less about what was being said about me. During my sophomore year, I struck up an unlikely friendship with one of the most popular girls in school, Casey. She was a girl that all the guys wanted to be with, and all the girls envied. She would defend me if anyone said anything. I worshipped this girl. And she liked me because I wasn't fake like the other girls in our school. And she had a nasty temper, fortunately never directed at me, that some people didn't know how to handle. I've always been good at adapting to personalities and know when it's best to leave people alone, so we always got along very well. But Casey had a wild streak and would get into lots of trouble when she wasn't with me. I didn't care too much, and neither did my mum, as long as I wasn't involved. Looking back, I was naive, and honestly believed that she intentionally kept me away from this because she was quite territorial over me. I was one of her real friendships, and she didn't want to risk losing me. That was until she met Rex. Towards the end of the summer, before my senior year, I began to see less and less of Casey. She had met Rex and was doing whatever she could to be where he was. He was in his 20s and was having parties. I worked and had a strict curfew, so it wasn't like I could go out with her. But I had other friends now and didn't give her a hard time about it. 2 weeks into the school year, Casey and I made plans to have an all-weekend sleepover. We were going to colour her hair and watch some movies and absorb every bit of sun we could whilst the weather was good. So that Friday, she picked me up after my shift. We dropped her stuff off at my place and went to Walmart to buy a hair colour. While there, she got a call from one of Rex's friends. Apparently he was having a huge party and invited her. To be honest, I expected her to blow me off right then and there, but to my surprise, she asked if I was cool with her heading over there for a little bit. I agreed and told my mum we were going to drive around for a bit. There's no way my mum would have been fine with it, and we just told her we'd be back in a bit. This party was out by the lake, and it took a series of country roads to get to. When we arrived, I only knew one other person there, and we spoke briefly before they left. After this, I was left to my own devices. Casey had disappeared with Rex, and I didn't see her for another hour. She and several other girls were making their way to the door when I caught up to her. She said they were going to go get cigarettes and be back in 20 minutes. I asked if she could drop me off home, but she said there wasn't any room. Needless to say, I was upset, but I parked myself on the couch and tried to socialise with the two who were left. 2 hours later, she hadn't returned and was ignoring my calls. I was angry at her and most of all scared. Those who were left, about 15 people, were gathered in front of me with a large amount of meth, pipe and syringes. They offered me some, but I politely refused, but no one pushed me into it. My phone had 2% battery and I couldn't reach my sister or her boyfriend, who sadly knew where I was. Now it's been 4 hours since she's gone and I'm sitting alone with this guy Brad. He's been alternating between meth and weed the entire night. Once we're alone, he insists I join him. I made up the excuse that I had a brain aneurysm, which I found out to be true recently, and told him that I didn't want to risk it. I also said my job would drug test me for weed. This didn't deter him for long, as he was completely gone. He only stopped long enough to hit on me and beg for, you know. I told him no, and begged him to stop. He went back for one last round of meth before trudging off to the bathroom. Most of you are thinking you would be walking home at this point. I'll tell you that I was at least 20 miles from home and at least 5 miles to the nearest house. I had no idea where I was, and fear can make you do stupid things. I tried looking for a landline, but no dice. Then out of nowhere I'm being pulled by my hair to the couch. Brad was that angry that I turned him down. Screaming did no good because we was the only ones there. He sat on top of my legs, held my arms above with one hand, and blew smoke from his joint in my face. I've never liked the smell or taste. Not judging anyone who enjoys their cannabis, it's just not for me. As I choke over the smoke, he's trying to remove his baseball shorts and filling me up. I'm crying and begging, telling him no. Just then, the person who lived there runs through the door and hits me with a baseball bat. Apparently, he has acted as a designated driver to his inebriated buddies. He heard my screams from the driveway and got in as soon as he could. Unfortunately, he wasn't quick enough to catch my assault, but I was grateful. Had he been another minute, things could have been considerably worse for me. He begs me not to call the police because he was already on probation and doesn't want to go to prison for paraphernalia. So I stupidly agree. This guy saved me, and I didn't want to return the favour with incarceration. He offers to take me home, and just as we're getting into his truck, Casey pulls up with Rex and the girl she left with. She's messed up. I've never seen her that way before. I later found out they had gone 2 hours away from a meth score, even though there was plenty to go around at the party. The guy who lived there filled her. Rex and the others on that had transpired. She wouldn't even look at me. She asked one of the other girls to take me home and left with Rex. Awful, right? Never have I, or have I since, been so betrayed. To make matters worse, the girl who drove me home threatened to harm me if I ever told anyone about what happened. That I know where you live. I arrived home shortly after sunrise. Apparently, Casey sent my mum a text. She pretended to be me and said my phone had died and that we decided to stay at her place. My mum had no reason to be worried about me. It took me days to tell her what happened. My boyfriend's sister beat the crap out of Brad. Casey and I were never the same after. It took me 2 months to reach out to her again. Some of you might wonder why. To me, as much as she betrayed me, it was worse for me to write her off when she needed me the most, even if she had done the same. My mother had seen her around and told me that she was in bad shape and was obviously using hard drugs. Her and I now live states apart and we talk occasionally. She's doing much better. As far as Brad is concerned, he did eventually go to prison on drug related charges. I don't know where he is now, but I get anxious when I go to visit my family. It's a small town and it wouldn't be hard to run into him if he were there.
Back in 2007 or so, we moved to a new home that had been off the rental market due to the previous tenant trashing it. All good. There was still a bloodstain on the carpet, holes in the walls, but they were trying to fix it up, and were happy to find some new people to live there. But strange things kept happening. Underwears and bras were missing off the line. We kept seeing someone walking through our backyard. Someone moved a bench into the yard under our son's bedroom door and tried to break the security screen. We padlocked the gates, but we kept seeing this person walking through. Then one night, when my husband was on his way to work, I could hear someone outside the house. They got to the fuse box, and there I am sitting in the dark with a 2-year-old little boy with some maniac laughter and hitting on the door. Needless to say, I called the police, but they took 6 hours to arrive. They wave it off as a prank and do very little. It really shook my trust in the old police. In 3 months we had 3 attempted break-ins, and we couldn't work out why. We honestly, being young parents, had very little to steal. We took precautions, changed our son's curtains from Winnie the Pooh to normal ones, and he slept in our room. We were very afraid and never felt secure. One night, we could hear someone at the window. We focus in and can see a face. They begin punching on the glass. We call the police. I give a description, but they take hours before they turn up. We're chatting with them on the line the whole time. Eventually some female police officers turn up. When they arrive, the first thing they say to me is, "Why is the light on under the house?" Now there's a storage area under the house where we put things on the day that we moved in, but no one had turned the light on. They gone on to investigate and basically found a nestled bed made out of moving boxes, some of my underwear and bras, a stack of our son's toys, and our outgrown clothes. This guy had been living under the house the whole time. The police told us to padlock the door into the storage area and left, telling us just to keep an eye out for him. The landlord ended up finding out it may have been the old tenant who had been evicted. It took maybe another 6 months to feel safe, even hanging out clothes on the line. To be honest, I've never felt right since that, and I've always been far more paranoid of little things than I should be.
I was recommended to post this here. I'm not really sure what to do. The past 2 nights, Wednesday and Thursday, at 11 PM, an unknown man has stood in front of my house gate for roughly 5 minutes. A little explanation of my house's layout. I'm a college student renting a small 2-bedroom house with my roommate. We have a small courtyard that is walled and gated in front of the door. The doorbell was on the other side of the gate, so that is kind of our public front door. The first time I saw him was Wednesday night. I had been in my room playing Apex Legends and went down to the kitchen to fill up my water cup. The lights were off in the main area of the house, and I noticed a figure out the window that faces the courtyard and gate. Since it was dark inside the house, I don't think he saw me. I called my roommate over and told him to be quiet. We watched him in silence until he left, not really that long. We were creeped out for a while, but we eventually went back to our rooms. I couldn't stop thinking about who he was and what he wanted, and the next night, Thursday, sat in the living room on my laptop, nervous to see if anyone come back. My worst nightmare came true. I looked up from my laptop and saw the figure in front of the gate. This time I was the only one in. I couldn't make out who he was. He was male, tall, wearing a dark coat and blue jeans. He wasn't moving, just standing in front of the gate, looking in my direction. He left about 5 minutes later. At this point I'm extremely freaked out and waiting for him to come back. I'm not sure what to do if I see him again tonight. Maybe it's a neighbour. Hopefully someone can give me some plausible explanation. Update. Just finished reading all your comments. Thanks for all the responses. Last night my roommate and I waited until 2 AM with the phone ready to call if he returned. Happy to report he didn't come back last night. We made sure all of our lights outside were on, and that may have deterred him. I think we'll stop again tonight and see if he returns. I'll update with any new information. Thanks for the advice. Hey guys, as of yet there hasn't been any update on this situation. Hopefully they're all okay. Who knows what the man could have wanted, but it's extremely creepy to think.
Okay, so some obituary backstory. I live in a tiny town in northern Kentucky. When I say tiny, I mean microscopic. Nice neighborhood, if a little stereotypical southern, low crime rate, everyone knows each other, lots of fundamentalists, lots of pickup trucks. Not my cup of tea as an adult, but on the whole, it felt very safe to grow up in. You walk to school, no school bus. The city is so small. You can get from one end to the other in about 20 minutes on foot. It's a big football town too. Not much else to do really. The biggest points of interest are the church, football pitch, Kroger. Now this happened when I was 16 years old. It was a typical Friday night. I was home watching/hanging out with my brother, who was 9 at the time. Now we recently had new neighbours moving in next door to us, and their kid, Austin, was his age. They became best friends pretty much instantly. There's always a football game on Friday nights in season. The whole town is in there. Lots of my friends and his friends too. I wasn't partial to games. Once I had seen one, I seen them all. I would occasionally walk down to the field to meet up with some buddies and do stuff after, but that's about the extent of it. So my phone rings, my brother gets it, and I'm quite sure we're playing a video game of some kind. Around this time, I'm fairly sure it is Smash Brothers Melee on the old GameCube. He was intimidatingly good for his age, and had a nice sibling rivalry going. He always ended up playing with Roy, I with Marth. These matches were absolute nail-biters. He then hangs up and tells me and Austin that there's a game with his folks, and can we pretty please go down and get him. I don't want to be down there in a huge crowd of sweaty rednecks, and told him so. But Jen, his mum says he can't walk home without us. He wants us to come and hang out. We can do a 3-person tournament. Come on John, please. Ugh, fine, okay, let's go. It's a 10-minute walk maximum, and at least we wouldn't have to stay. We decide that we'll go down, and we're grabbing Austin, and then we're noping it back to play some more Melee. We head off our dead street, hang a left, and start down the main road. The sports complex is on the road. It's just at the bottom of a hill. It was about twilight, and from the top of the hill, we could already hear the marching band and cheering. I didn't see many folks around, but nothing looks unusual. I really didn't expect to see anyone. Pretty much everyone was down at the game. Looking ahead, I could see parked cars lining the streets, with the bulk of them by the right turn off to the sports complex. He's doing the typical kid brother thing as he walks. Hey Jen, did you know owls can turn their head almost completely around? Hey Jen, me and Austin had a shoe throwing contest and we went so far with it that we couldn't even see our shoes anymore. Hey, look at the flower, it's awesome. Now at about the halfway mark, I see a golden SUV pull across the street, just opposite to where we're walking. It sits for about 10, maybe 15 seconds, then a man gets out, just as we're passing by, so that he's behind us. It's an older guy, mid-40s in retrospect. He screamed creeper with a weasel face, tall and wiry. Weird smile, and at the time I didn't think twice, of course. Just a guy got into the game, probably to meet up with his family. Brother on my left, me on the right, we keep walking normally. After about 30 seconds or so, I can hear shuffling. I turn around out of reflex, just to glance at what's going on. The guy's gaining on us now. Okay, no big deal. He's probably trying not to miss anything. He'll probably walk right past us. I would have loved to keep the brisker pace myself, but I had my brother in tow, and his 9-year-old legs can't handle speed walking. We kept going as usual, but now I have made a mental note. A little more time goes by, maybe a minute. I start thinking, wondering why he hasn't breezed by us yet. The guy sure looked to be in a hurry. So I turn around again, and the man's right behind us. And I mean close enough to see the creepiest smile / sneer I've ever seen on the face of a person. Only he wasn't behind us per se, he was directly behind my brother. And when I happened to glance back, he had his arms out in front of him. He was reaching for my brother, and had almost had a hold of his upper right arm. I caught this guy nearly mid-snatch. I reach out my left hand, put it around my brother's back. Probably 5 seconds went by, but it felt like way longer. After I had an arm barrier, I do a quick scan of the street. There's no one else around, no witnesses and no help. I was only 16, this guy's a lot bigger than me, and what am I meant to do? I lean down and say, as quietly and calmly as I can, come on Ross, let's go there. I bet I can go faster than you. I start to speed walk and so does my brother. I have my arm on his back, and I'm half pushing him, rushing him along as fast as he can walk. I can see the sports complex and it's just down the hill. We're about a minute or so away at most. After about another 30 seconds or so, I'm not quite sure. The whole thing seems to go by in slow motion. I turn again. The guy's speed walking also. He's matching our pace to keep right behind my brother, and he's gaining. I really start to panic. He's really after us. There's no other explanation. I don't know him, and I almost caught him grabbing the kid. Now he's grabbing in the distance again. He's picking up speed, and he's grabbing and smiling, while sneering, almost a predatory look. I turn back around, and I see we are so close to the stadium, so close. If we can just get down there a little quicker, the property opens up and everyone will be there. I have to get down to those people right now. I tried to sound calm, but I'm sure I didn't at this point. Let's run, Ross, come on. I'll race you, and we start running. By now, I'm looking more at what's ahead of me than what's going on around me. Now he thinks it's a game. He smiles and starts running a little. I remembered feeling a tiny speck of relief. Oh good, he doesn't know he's about to get murdered or something. And he's pretty quick. He's into it too. I see the entrance to the stadium. I think we're going to be home by now. I turn around, And this guy is running. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I knew at that point, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this guy is only running to catch us. Well, not per se, but my brother. He started to gain, but he's not close enough yet. I whipped back around and sped up to my personal max. And of course, the kid pumps his own legs to the max, because he wants to win the race so he can brag about it. Now once again, I'm looking directly behind me to the street, and I'm sure he's still following me. I hear thuds on the pavement and I know he's getting close. My heart was sending electrical currents of fear to the rest of my body. And just as I heard him coming right up behind us, we hit the stadium ground. It was a sharp left turn and bam, people. There were people everywhere. It was half time and the adults were out in the smoking area talking. The guy comes right around the corner following us, and the second he turned the corner and saw all the people, he panicked. I could see the surprise and fear in his eyes. I had turned around at that moment to see where he was, and I looked right at him, his eyes and mine locked. He looked around at everyone, looks at me, looks at my brother and walks away, back where he's come from. Ross was out of breath, but still nudged to go and collect Austin. I said, "Give me a second, man." I peeked around the stone archway and watched this guy walk, not run, back up the street. I stood there and watched him walk all the way back up the hill, across the street, back into his SUV and drive away. That's when it really hit me. This very real situation that we were just in, the real danger of it. That guy was there to get us. Well, not me as much, but my brother. What's more is that he probably would have had we not made it into the stadium. The crowd spooked him, and most likely that's what saved my brother's life. We find Austin, but I made the whole gang wait the next game until we actually called to ride home with his folks. No burden to them. We live right next door. I was shaken up for the rest of the night, and for a couple of days after. Now this kind of town is the last place that you'd expect to be snatched in. I also never told anyone, not even my parents. I never told my brother, who's almost 20 now, and could probably handle it. But I just never saw a reason to give him a complex about something that happened so long ago. I also never told the police. I have no idea what happened to the golden SUV guy. I don't know if he lived around here or whatever. I don't know if he's been caught or gone jail. What I do know for certain is that he was there to kidnap my brother that day. I don't know what plans he had for him or how long he plotted. I'm just glad we both made it out of there okay. Now where I used to live, 2 doors up the street was a tiny house that didn't have a bedroom. The boy lived in the attic. His drunken bum of a dad came home one night and started hitting his mum to give him money for drinks. The kid hit him 7 times with a deer rifle, got over 100 miles away, and didn't know how to drive a car properly because of his age. He ended up getting a year in the boy's state home. I'm not sure, but I think I heard that he wasn't charged for killing his dad, only for stealing the car. I used to live in a really small community. There was only about 300 houses where I lived. That's why this incident scared me so much. So there was a weird couple that lived down the road from us. We always avoided them, until one day that wasn't possible. I was outside talking to my dad in our backyard when we heard gunshots. They're unmistakable. They're definitely gunshots. Now at first we just think it's hunters around our land, so grab our guns to go and investigate. But we then realise that it could only have been coming from the neighbour's house. We slowly approach and can see some bullet holes in the door. We know something's terribly wrong. We call the police and it turns out that they got into an argument one day. The wife had enough and just shot the husband there and then. Crazy. The town that I grew up in was very small. Everyone knew each other, and you knew where everything was. Not like there was much here though to begin with. Just a petrol station, football pitch, and lots of farm fields. Now you wouldn't expect anything bad to happen here, would you? Well, nor did I. That's why when this one thing in particular happened, it shook me to my core. I was working a night shift, and I was coming home exhausted at about 3 in the morning. As I was driving, I kept getting this weird radio static on my radio as I was driving. It got on my nerves because I really like listening and singing to music on my drive back. It really helped keep me awake. The static cuts out and it sounds as though a radio interrupts and says, "You better watch out." Just as that happens, I see some lights up ahead. I can see a car is stopped sideways on the road. Now I've completely forgotten about what happened with the radio. I slow down as I'm about to get out, when suddenly the radio comes on again like normal. I can see 2 people laying on the road like they're dead. Something feels horribly wrong about this. I instantly slam my car into reverse and start to speed away. As I look in my rearview mirror, I can see them both stand up. I can then hear a radio sound again saying, "Damn, he got away." Now I have no idea how my radio picked up on their walkie-talkies or whoever else was there, but this terrified me. This story came out of nowhere. I truly wasn't expecting any of this. I've had creepy people and weird things happen, but generally speaking, I'm aware of my surroundings and don't have many issues. I'd just broken up with my boyfriend and moved back home for summer school until school was starting back up in fall. I got full-time work at a gas station a mile away from my mum and dad, and I would normally just mess around with my hometown friends. That was my summer plan. Things were going to be quiet for the first month. I never really realised how many creeps come into gas stations, and we're in a fairly nice suburban area, but it's quite a small town that we live in. We of course had our regulars. One of them is a late 30s guy who started to intentionally wait in my longer line to be checked out, and various things like that. Looking back, I was a bit obvious. A 21-year-old girl that, due to previous abusive relationships, didn't view myself as attractive. I just thought of these guys as friendly and nice. So he first starts coming only to my register, and then, suddenly, I see him a few more times a shift. I notice that he's always very polite, well-mannered, never really giving creepy vibes. Now he had a couple of teen daughters that would be with him here and there, which made him seem harmless to me. Generally, I worked early morning shifts but flipped to later shifts as I have always been a night owl, and getting maybe a couple of hours of sleep before I gone in. When that happened, the creep was upset he couldn't see me as much because he worked second shift. At this point, I was actively avoiding him now, stocking the caller if I saw him pull up. He started to come when I would get off work, and I would delay myself until he left. Then I started getting notes and flowers on my car, until one night, I'm walking out of my vehicle, and he popped up from behind it. I backed up, telling him I'm not interested at all. He assures me that he would woo me and change my mind. I switched schedules, working nights, days, mornings, all over the place so it's not predictable. I'm working one afternoon when he comes up with this bat crazy woman with 2 young girls. So she starts asking her daughters if this was a girl, which they reply yes, and the woman screams at me and threatens me to stay away from her husband, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Apparently, the psycho man is married and had been telling his wife he has a young hot gas station girlfriend that he's moving in with, whatever. The lady's nuts. Her daughters look embarrassed and she was not leaving the gas station. The store owner watching on video from the back calls the cops and the lady's told to leave. At the time, I was dating out with someone and this one guy come up to make sure when I left my nights, this guy wasn't popping in again. Normally at nights we had 2 people, but the other girl called in. I have no idea how, but this guy slipped him 10 minutes before we close and just said he's going to keep me company while I was doing my nightly activities closing. He was making comments about how no girl should be here alone this late at night. Why, I wouldn't just give him a chance. How he'll move in with me, buy me cars and stuff. I told him no. Your wife's not keen on this either. Then he flies into a rage screaming, what did you tell her? All craziness. At this point, I'm trapped inside a gas station after close, but I wouldn't dare go to the parking lot where my car is. It's dark and obviously he's gonna follow. Now thank goodness that my boyfriend happened to be coming home from work and notices my car still at the gas station and comes check on me. As soon as he came to the door, he could see my panic and the creeper storms off into the night. Now after closing we called the police. It's a small town and he's found easily, driving a white Kia. The officers followed up that he had a knife, rope and duct tape on him.